or we define this into three categories: the variables, the data types, and the operators. Okay, so we're starting with the variables, whereby I said variables are used to store data in Python. Okay, I'm giving you an example of variables. Okay, let me say I have a bucket, and then this bucket I'm using to store different fruits. Okay, so this bucket I can refer it to as my variable. Okay, so it can store data. Okay, so that is what we refer to as a variable. This is an example just for those who are new to this, they can be able to understand what I mean. So they are dynamically typed, meaning you don't need to declare their type explicitly. And then you have the data types. Data types in Python provides various built-in data types such as numbers, strings, and the floats. We'll discuss about these different data types that we have. We'll get to understand the meaning of each of these data types: the strings, the floats, the integers, we'll discuss about the complex data types and all types of data types that we have. And then we have operators. Operators in Python supports a wide range of operators, including arithmetic operators, assignment operators, comparison operators, logical operators, and the bitwise operators. So we also discuss about each of these operators that we have in Python. So let's start with variables. So just as I said, a variable is a memory storage location. Yeah, it's just like a bucket that we can use to store the fruits, right? So creating a variable, we use an assignment operator. We use an assignment operator. So this is what we refer to as an assignment operator. Yeah, this is an assignment operator. So variables are used to store values, and they can be assigned using an assignment operator. So for the first example that I gave you, I have my bucket, yeah, and then this bucket is used to store my fruits. So I'm assuming this is my bucket, and then I will have V. Okay, so this V or this bucket, let me illustrate it properly. This is my bucket. Okay, so this bucket will hold my fruits. So I will assume this is the data. Okay, this is my data, and then this is my variable. So this bucket is my variable. It will store my fruits. So that is what we refer to as variables in Python. Or we also call them identifiers. So when defining a variable, we have the rules that we must follow. Okay, we have the rules that we must follow. Number one, alphabet symbols, either uppercase or lowercase. For example, as I'm creating a variable A, right? So this variable A is going to store a value, right? So I'm assuming this variable A is storing my value 20. So once I want to access this value, I will use my variable a. So this variable can either be lowercase or uppercase, right? It can either be lowercase or uppercase variable. But these variables are case sensitive. That takes me to the fourth rule. These variables are case sensitive. What I mean, if I defined my variable as a lowercase, when I'm trying to call my variable and then I call it using a uppercase, I will get an error, right? That is because I used the lower a. So variables are case sensitive. Okay, so let me say, for example, I have a storing 20 and then my a uppercase is storing 15. So if I call this variable here, I will get an output of 15. Okay, if assuming I wanted to get 20, so I'll get 15 instead of 20. So if I want to get 20, I will use a lowercase to get my value as 20. So that is a rule that you must understand. Another rule is, if identifiers start with an underscore, then it indicates it is a private identifier. So when I talk about an identifier, it's the same name as the variables. We use these two terms interchangeably. Yeah. So variables, when it starts with an underscore, we mean that variable is a private variable. Another thing is, identifier should start with or should not start with digits. What we mean is, if I define my variable as p or 1p, that is not the right way to define a variable. Okay, that is not the right way to define a variable. A variable should not start with a digit. Another rule is, we cannot use these reserved words as identifiers. When I say reserved words, these are words that are already defined in Python. Yeah, these are already defined in Python. So we cannot use a reserved word to define an identifier. For example, we have for example, false. False is a reserved word. Yeah, so you cannot use false to define an identifier. Yeah, you cannot use if to define an identifier. We discuss about this data. Yeah, diff is the keyword that we use to define a function. So you cannot use a diff keyword to define an identifier. So what we mean is, you cannot define an identifier using reserved words. Some of the reserved words we have false, we have diff, we have class, we have true, we have none, we have if, we have elif, we have for, we have try, we have return. Yeah, so that is just a few of the many reserved words that we have. We'll be able to see all these reserved words when we will be doing our practical. So you don't have to use the reserved words when you are defining an identifier. Another rule is, there is no length limit for Python identifier. What we mean is, you can have any length of the name of your identifier. Right? For example, you can have up to 30 characters of an identifier. Okay, so maybe or you can say Tom, or let me say buckets. Let's say buckets of pineapples in the market. That is a whole name that you are using to define an identifier, assuming that is up to 30 characters. I mean a packet of fruits in the market. That is a whole name you're combining together to make it as an identifier. So there is no length limit, for a Python identifier, but it is not recommended to use too lengthy identifiers. So you should avoid using too lengthy identifiers. Another rule is $sign or $sign symbol is not allowed in Python. Yeah, $sign symbol is not allowed in Python. That is, when you're trying to create an identifier, you cannot use a $sign to define an identifier. So that is some of the rules that you need to understand when you're trying to define a variable or an identifier. Okay, so I hope that is well understood.